and the grandson of Pete and Margaret Johnson, who maintained a permanent residence on the rancheria and reservation up until the time it was terminated in 1964. I am also the nephew through marriage of Chief Lewis Kelly, our tribal leader from 1912 to 1980, and his wife, Aunt Naomi. Life was tough living on the reservation. It had no electricity, it had no refrigeration, no running water, no sewer, no television, and no telephones. So nothing that was considered as modern living standards of the time of 1964. Even though our reservation was illegally terminated in 1964, 97% of our tribal members still live nearby even to this day. I am the very last Indian who was actually born on the reservation and lived on the reservation. I was born in 1949, and at the age of 2, in 1951, was forcibly removed by the government from the reservation and sent into what was called foster care. Along with my mother and 2 aunts, my younger brother Bob, he's here today, who never made it to the reservation. He was in the hospital and didn't make it to the reservation. All of us were sent into foster care, and my mother, after a short time, about less than a year, ended up in Sacramento. My 2 aunts ended up later into the Bay Area, and in 1952 my brother joined me and we moved to Hills Flat, Grass Valley at Nana's or Sally's residence, and the McConnell families, who were my godparents for the following 15 years. This is a picture of my grandfather's place in 1920, and it looks almost exactly the same when they burned it to the ground in 1964. I, like all tribal members, can trace our families back to over 5 to 7 generations, long before the gold rush, and we are the only indigenous people to these lands. This is a map of the Maidu language groupings of various tribes, and as you can see from the coloring, there's the Maidu tribe, the Concal tribe, and the Nishinon tribe. We are Nishinon Indians, meaning from among us or of our side. Even though all 3 tribes have similarities in their root language, each one is truly a different tribe, different people. All speak a different language and needed interpreters in order to communicate to each other. All have different customs, different traditions, and different cultures. Calling the Indians in this territory Maidu is not correct. Okay? We are Nishinon, our lands are Nishinon, and our customs are Nishinon, and anything to do with Maidu does not belong here. The summary of our people's population. Prior to the gold rush, we estimate very conservatively that there was 7,000 natives in just our territory, the northern foothills around Nevada County only. In 1852, we numbered less than 3,500. In 1853, we numbered less than 2,500. In 1868, or 18 years after the gold rush started, we numbered less than 500. In 1905, the census that was taken, we numbered only 53. And in 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act, we numbered only 18. So 99.7% of our people disappeared. We are aware that some of our people may have run and hid whenever government agents came around for fear and may not be included in some of the counts figures above. But what I'm trying to demonstrate is that we were almost exterminated. A brief history. In 1847, Old Betsy, the grandmother of Chief Lewis Kelly, saw the first white people enter into the Nevada City area. Around 1850, the town folks forced moved one of our main villages, Ustama, out of town. The site was at the county courthouse and the Nevada City Elementary, which still stands today. In 1959, we obtained a permanent village site from the Craig's family, who protected us. In 1891, Chief Cully homesteaded 76 acres of land for our people. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson created a reservation called the Nevada City Rancheria for the protection of the last remaining Indians in all Nevada County territory. In 1934, the Indian Reorganization Act, our people voted to become a sovereign nation and dealt with the government on a government-to-government base. In 1964, because of the California Rancheria Act of 1958, Nevada City Rancheria was terminated and all our people lost our historic lands, burial grounds, sacred sites, and our identity as Native American Indians. The Peace Treaty of 1851, Nevada County territory, we believe, was divided into 10 tribal districts under the leadership of Chief Wema. And on July 18, 1851, at Camp Union on the Yuba River, these leaders signed the Camp Union Treaty of Peace and Friendship. The treaty promised to our people 127,000 acres of land in Grass Valley, Nevada City, and Yuba County area called Royce Area 287. Food included 500 heads of beef weighing 500 pounds each, 200 sacks of flour weighing 100 pounds each for 2 years, clothing for each person and blankets for 2 years, tools of all kinds, and grains for planting for 2 years, instructors, a school teacher, farmers, and tradespeople for 5 years, and structures for dwellings, schoolhouse, and shops. Everything supplied by the government if our people promised to give up all our lands and refrain from all aggression and hostility and signed the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which our leaders did. A year after the signing of our Camp Union Treaty and with pressures from California, the U.S. Senate rejected all 18 treaties, one of them being ours, which would have recognized the legal status of California tribes. These treaties were removed from public record and hidden until later they were discovered by accident in 1905. How we live. I'm probably 2 slides behind, huh? Okay, there's that one, there's that one. There's the leaders of the tribe up there. And how we lived. Housing prior to contact was basically called the U, or some would call it a pit house. It was dug 3 to 4 feet into the ground and was about 10 to 20 feet in diameter based on family size. A large forked tree stood in the center that was charred at the bottom, and 2 horizontal trees met in the fork. Cedar bark slabs covered the entire structure, leaving only a smoke hole and an entrance. Then it was covered with a foot of dirt. The smoke hole was charred so it wouldn't catch the unit on fire, and the floor was generally covered with pine needles, but tule mats were also known to be used. Our dry food storage area, where all the baskets would sit on up to a foot of cedar bark shavings to protect it from moisture and protect it from the insects. Entrance was always facing east, the sunrise, and an address pole stood at the entrance, with the chief's pole being 30 feet tall, decorated with various colors of fur and feathers. The hue was a great structure to live in. It was cool in the summer and easy to heat and stay warm in the wintertime. It offered a great protection from all the winter and summer elements, and especially all the wild animals. This is a drawing of a typical village. Housing after contact was called a U-boat. Due to all the relocations of the villages to avoid conflicts with the miners, the hue structures all but disappeared. Hubos were basically a lean-to of cedar bark, forming a cone structure similar to the teepees of the Plains Indians. Other covering materials were known to be used with hides and canvas. This is a sketch from 1854 from Crenshaw in the Nevada City area. Here's a photograph that was taken right at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. Most of them being on the reservation and some of them just being in the surrounding areas. The next major structure is called a cume, and it was also known by other Indian tribes, which you may have heard about as being the sweat lodge. Okay, it was used mostly for celebrations and ceremonies. Originally built basically similar to the U in the ground, but was not known to be covered with earth. With additional center poles, it would be 40 feet to 90 feet in diameter was common in our territory. And every village around the area had cumes. Chicago Park area had many villages and had 17 roundhouses. And in one of the villages, the roundhouse measured 180 feet across in diameter. In Pleasant Valley area also had many villages and had 19 roundhouses. And in the village of, I'm going to destroy this name, Onapoma village was 200 feet across. 2/3 the length of a football field under one structure back before gold rush. In Nevada City, Camp Pooty had 5 roundhouses in one village alone. Okay? Granaries was another major structure, and it was used for storing food. Each residence would have 2 to 4 granaries, maybe more, always storing 2 years of supplies, and in good years 3. Stored acorns mostly, but sometimes one would be used for seeds or nuts. Construction was basically a giant basket, 6 feet wide and 8 feet tall. Inside would be lined with materials that would hide the scent and protect it from critters. The bottom would set on a large rock or a piece of wood to support the heavy weight, and everything that contacted the ground was covered with pine pitch to safeguard it from critters and insects. In wintertime, it would be thatched, and a hole was at the bottom of it to access the oldest acorns first. Other structures that were known to our people would be small sweat houses, birthing huts, and girls' ministration huts. The lifestyle of our people. Sorry. Lifestyle of our people is appearance. Hey, look at me. I look like an Indian. You know? Okay. And that was rather simple. Some of us a little darker in complexion, some of us a little lighter. But dress was basically easy, mostly nude. And the very old and the very young were nude all the time and until contact. Women mostly wore 2 aprons, one in the front and one in the back, and the men mostly wore a loincloth of a deer hide for protection, not for modesty. Okay? Wintertime, we wore robes made of the hides of mountain lions, deer, and small elk. We also used a feather robe that was made from the breast and hide of waterfowls. We also used coil fur strips of rabbit hides, which is shown in the picture in the corner. We also wore moccasins and leggings, but mainly for hunting, not for general wear. Bathing was done frequently, even breaking ice in order to do so. And we have old historic accounts of miners criticizing the Indians for doing that, because in their views, once a year was more than adequate enough, whether they needed it or not. So meal preparation. Cooking was done in baskets for soup, stews, and mushes. Skewering the food on sticks and standing it next to a fire. Roasting mostly for insects, vertebrates, seeds, and nuts. Large quantities was done in rock-lined fire pits. Small quantities was done on a flat cooking stone over the fire, or in a basket with cooking rocks rolling around on top. Cooking on earth ovens was done mostly for breads and meats. Leaf wrapping was using grape leaves, black oak leaves, poison oak leaves was common, and eating the leaves with the meal was also common. Clay coating was for all small animals and rodents and birds. And they just coat the animal in clay, throw them into a fire pit or the bird, and when it was done cooking, they'd bring it out. The clay would be so hard they'd have to crack it. When they cracked it and peeled it away, it took away all the fur, all the hide, all the feathers, and just had left moist meat underneath. Or just simply throw the critter on the bed of coals and burn the fur and the feathers off. So either way. Some of the tools of our people were baskets. We had cooking baskets, and we had storage baskets, bird baskets for... Wow. See the bird basket? Okay, burden baskets for carrying food and supplies flat trays and baskets. We had spice and salt baskets. We had water baskets and drinking baskets. We had baskets for catching grasshoppers, eels, and we also had fish trap baskets. Cooking rocks was very common, and my grandparents talked about gathering the cooking rocks from a small creek out of Colfax, because they had these special rocks there. And they had to stand up to be heated red hot and then dropped quickly into cold water and not shatter or explode. So that's where they gathered, I know we gathered some of our rocks. Stirring sticks was common to keep the rocks turning, otherwise it burned the food or burned a hole through the basket. Pickup sticks was used for picking up the hot rocks from the fire pits. Flat stone rocks was used over the fire pits for cooking and everything else. And this is a native woman bleaching acorn to remove the tannin so we could eat that. And a demonstration is right out there. Other items we had, which can be found around all over Nevada County and other places, is dead rock mortars. We also had portable mortars and pestles, and we also used the matati and mano, mostly for harder seeds and nuts. Soap brushes were not only used to brush your hair, but also clean up around the food area. And then the porcupine tail brush and a comb was also used, and other items. Resources from flora or vegetation. Our people had an abundance of plants available to them. There you go. Our people had an abundance of plants available to them, and we did not need to travel far to obtain it. Burning the landscape was not only to clean out the debris and the insects, but to add fertilizer and improve the growth of the fallen plants. Foods included acorns, which was our main staple, and each person would require 500 to 1,000 pounds of acorns each year or more, based on is whether wet or dry. Nuts, we had several different pine nuts, hazelnuts, buckeye pods, and others. Seeds included grass seeds, rye, goosefoot, wild oats, to name a few. Fruit included wild plums, chokecherries, grapes, and others. Berries included blackberries, gooseberries, elderberries, strawberries, raspberries, and manzanita berries. Mushrooms, we knew of 15 different varieties, and we ate them all. Tubulars, bulbs, and roots included all the cluster lily, which included the white, the elegant, twining. We had blue dicks, grass nuts, and